Welcome to the House of Azor podcast. I'm your host, William, and joining me today will be Derek.
Hello.
And Sean.
Hello.
And we are recording remotely again, so we're doing this online again just because of the zombie infection that's spreading here. But this episode, so we're going to go back and do a little bit of throwback to the old format to some extent. Because we typically used to just cover one movie or have that be the focal point, and then we would talk about the news and stuff we've been watching before that. And then we changed it to where we just kind of talked about everything we've been watching. So it's kind of going to be a hybrid of the two because we just decided since Derek turned 30 this past month that he would get to choose a movie we could talk about. And we actually had to go through a few of them until we got to a movie we hadn't already done an episode on.
Yeah, because I suggested, what was the first one? Is it arachnophobia?
Yeah, arachnophobia.
Yeah, because that's on my actual birthday, the year I was born. But we already done that. And then I suggested Face Off. We'd already done that. So.
Yeah, so we're talking about Con Air.
Yeah.
Which I forgot just how many times in that movie they say the word Con Air.
Say it a lot.
Yeah, but before we discuss Con Air, we can discuss some news as pertaining to us, and then other stuff we've watched. So we've mentioned before. So Sean and I both made segments for a horror anthology that's coming up. That's called 13 Slays Till Christmas, and Sean did a segment, and I did a segment. And we recorded ours. I recorded mine back in February, and Sean did yours at the very beginning of March.
Was it March? I was trying to figure it. Was it March or April? Was it March?
It was March. Yeah, okay. It was just like a week or two before the COVID stuff started getting serious.
Yeah.
Because you recorded on Friday and Saturday, and then I think like the following Tuesday or Wednesday was when a lot of businesses started shutting down in-office operations and a lot of people work from home.
Yeah.
So just got through because I remember people on set were being concerned about shaking hands and stuff.
Like the conversation kind of just started getting serious the weekend we were shooting, but nobody was like, nobody was that worried yet because we've never done it, never experienced anything like this in our lifetime. So it was like, hey, there's might be something bad coming. But I mean, at the time, you don't know until,
Well, it was more like
everybody's going to be cautious now. If we hear that's coming again, and somebody's shooting, everybody's going to be like, "Okay, everybody wear a mat." It's changed things.
Yeah. Well, because and two, you have the element of I got lucky and chose February back when nobody was really talking about COVID too much here, and then it was in March when it really ramped up and people started getting it. Because I know like different employers around town started having people test positive. And that's why they're letting people work from home that were in like office jobs. But yeah, so the segment, so
labor and get to work from home like I did for I think almost 4 months. So.
Yeah. My dad, he's just now going back to work next week, and he's been off since March. And he's been like this or March or April, and he's like, oh, this has like changed me. Like he obviously does not want to go back.
Because now too, like I know there's a lot of discussion about, obviously there's a lot of professions that you absolutely cannot work from home because it requires you to provide a service to people or to be in public.
Yeah.
So there's some jobs you just can't translate to that. But a lot of office jobs, there's essentially no reason you can't just be work from home. And I do wonder how many companies after this will decide, hey, we saved a lot of money on overhead on utility bills and cleaning bills and all this stuff. So there's a lot of changes that'll ripple out from this over time. And then like the film industry, it'll be interesting to see how that goes. Cause I've seen some people talk about, well, maybe for the next year, we should scrap any scenes that have kissing or intimacy that require people to be close and where you can't control how much contact there is easily. And stuff like that. It was interesting to see how that works. Cause there's been movies recorded during the pandemic. I'm sure there's been a ton of Zoom call horror films that are being made right now.
Yeah, I mean, the one that hit Shudder, people seem to like, called Host. I'm not huge on. I've not watched any screen only film. And I just have not been in the mood. But yeah, I'm sure plenty are. But back to 13 Slaves to Christmas. Like, so the plan was for us to all basically premiere this film in July.
Yeah, be done by now.
Me and you were one of the. I think that maybe were we the first two to shoot, basically, possibly.
Or I don't know, the other one. There may have been one that shot around the same time as us. I don't remember, but we were the first three.
We were the first group because I was concerned with having enough time for editing because I wanted to leave a bunch of time.
I think I was the first one that had their edit done.
Yeah, and but anyway, so they've shot last weekend. I think they shot this weekend. Carlos, a friend of ours, shot this weekend. He's doing a segment. And then I believe I think PJ and them maybe are shooting next weekend or something. So as of right now, it's all happening. And they're still trying to figure out a way to get it out by Christmas. I mean, they think that'll be fine, but it's just, it's just figuring out how they want to get it out. Because if you do disc or something, you got to have it done by a certain date for pressing of the disc and, all that stuff. So that's all up in the air, but apparently it's still doing, because if we miss December, like this isn't like a normal, just random slasher. It's a Christmas focused one. So if we miss December, it's like, all right, I guess we hold it maybe, or release in like
for a year.
And if they release it in the spring, it's going to really lessen the impact as far as like, the viewership and people wanting to see it. Not that this is not that Core Anthology original or Christmas based horror, but it is a niche. Like, people will more likely watch that around Christmas than some things. So
you might be able to also, I guess, maybe do like the Christmas, try to get into the Christmas and July stuff too. December. I mean, but
at that point they'd probably wait. If it was already July, they'd probably just wait. Yeah, but it sounds like it's all happening. Hopefully it all goes through. A friend of mine was going to edit it, and he hadn't edited it before, and he was still working from home, but super busy, and he also has a kid, so it was like even harder and all this stuff. And then so he was like, he was getting worried about editing, so I ended up taking over editing duty. So, I mean, I didn't worry about it all year really, and then now I'm like crunched. But I've already got a draft done and stuff. I'm going to be fine. Like he let me know way ahead of time enough to get it done. We just got to send it off to do some tweaks. I got to set up the guy doing sound, and the color grading needs to be done, and then we're going to have it scored. Yeah, so it's happening though. If anybody has heard about that or interested, and then PJ, he's also, I guess, a producer on Cryptids. Justin Seaman, and I can't remember the other producer on that, but Justin Seaman worked on some Volumes of Blood stuff. He did The Barn 2. Anyway, have you seen anything about that, Derek? The Cryptid movie. They're shooting that up in Pennsylvania, and essentially it's an anthology they've been working on for a while, but it's each segment's about different cryptids, and they got the wraparound. It's basically one of the oh my gosh, what's his name? They bring up in Art Bell.
Art Bell.
Oh yeah.
They obviously like passed away, but it's like an Art Bell, like a radio show. But they got Joe Bob Briggs to be the radio host to talk about all the segments of the cryptids.
Oh, that's pretty awesome.
So he's going to be they've already shot his segment there. And so he's going to be basically the bridge in between each one, talking about the radio. I think he's supposed to have callers calling in, telling the stories. Yeah. And they've already shot that. So PJ produced that. So I think, I don't know if he's been on set much because it is in Pennsylvania. We had this going on, but I think he did just go up there recently and stuff. So, but they're also, he's not as probably in dire straits with that film because Justin Seaman is, you know what I mean? I think they're spearheading a lot of stuff up there, it seems like, but PJ's balancing a couple things right now. So, and Eric Hutchinson, he's also, I don't know if Eric is producing that, but Eric is also obviously producing ours 13 Slays, because he's produced all the stuff with PJ, at least since Volumes of Blood, right?
Yeah, I think.
Yeah.
Then like my segment's done. I'm just waiting for the score. I'm also doing some behind the scenes stuff. That's pretty much done. Julie and I need to sit down and record some stuff for hours, and then I'll have to.
Yeah, I'll shoot some stuff and I'll cut it up just to send you some bites, and you can cover it with B-roll.
Yeah.
So I'm
not sure. I'm not sure if because I'm So there'd be like a longer behind the scenes that would go on like a eventual disc release. And the idea was to do a a different, little bit shorter cut that cuts out spoiler stuff that we can put on social media and YouTube or whatever sooner than later. So we'll see how that all goes.
Disc space is also a factor on disc releases. So if they do a 2-disc, they'll be fine, but that costs more money in the pressing. But like last time, I think for Volumes of Blood Horror Stories, there were some special features that I think the one you put together for my segment that we went up there and shot, that made it on the disc, but there was some other stuff. I don't know if it was the commentaries, because I think I recorded a commentary and I don't know if those ever made it to the disc because they, eventually they had too much stuff and it ran out of space. And that movie was like 2 hours and 20 minutes or something as well.
Yeah.
They're hoping this one will be like between 90 minutes and an hour 45, which is always better for a horror film. I think that's not, a singular invested story.
Yeah. Yep. So keep your eyes out for more information on that. We'll share any news that comes along. We know about it. Like other stuff, there's like the new Halloween movie got pushed to 2021. Yeah. So it went from October of 2020 to October of 2021. So people were pretty upset about that. But at the end of the day, on some of these movies, that last one made over $250 million in theaters worldwide. If they'd released that on VOD, they would probably made half that at most. So I understand like the studios pushing back their big release movies so theaters are opened at a normal level again. Mm-hmm. But that just means a lot of movies we're looking forward to are getting pushed.
Now, go ahead, Derek.
Something else I think about too, though, is like, as all these movies get pushed back, what's actually if the theaters open up this year, what's you even going to watch, and how much of the theater chains are under in between now? Not that
what they're going to do, they're going to probably ease back in with movies that were in theaters when the shutdown happened. So stuff that's still newish, like Invisible Man, maybe. But I think some of the theaters will be doing kind of like re-releases of Titanic and Avengers and big movies from the past until the studios get comfortable to put a stake in the ground and say, Wonder Woman 1984 is coming out on this date for sure. Or the Black Widow movie or Halloween or Candyman or whatever. So I think in the near term, we're going to see re-releases of stuff that's already been out before. And then maybe some smaller stuff could see its way into theaters or stuff that was streaming only, maybe.
Village 8 by Us was showing stuff like Batman Begins, like they are right now, because my wife works over there and I was dropping off something one day. So I think I'm on Baxter Avenue, which they show more first run. Caddyshack, Despicable Me, Goodfellas, The Rental, Summerland, and then coming soon, Tax Collector. So yeah, which dude, honestly, I wish there would be a more mix of that anyway. It's like, I would love to go see Goodfellas in theaters, but I'm not going now. But
yeah.
Once you like a midnight showing or like a Tuesday matinee or something,
So something that would be a prime opportunity for someone to take advantage of right now at drive-ins is to do a drive-in screening of Grindhouse, kind of the way that movie was meant to be shown. Because a lot of drive-ins do the double features. And I think part of the reason that movie had trouble, we did an entire episode on it, but I think it was just a movie that's essentially two full-length movies squished together. The average person looks at the runtime is like, oh man, but like, I think this would be a good time to kind of revisit stuff like that. Sadly, there's not many drive-ins around here, which is why I bought a projector and screen to use in my backyard. But so there's
the one we go to is just kids only too. It's our families, PD-13 and under.
So there will be stuff that's going straight to streaming, because I think like the new season of Haunting of Hill House will be on Netflix this October.
Well, that wasn't hitting theaters, William.
And I'm just saying, like, just things to even look forward to in terms of movie entertainment. And there's that one Clive Barker series that's coming to Hulu. And there's a few things here and there, but like a lot of your big tentpole releases people are expecting are they're next year. So it's mostly just
what's going on with Halloween, like Miramax, are they done, or what's the deal with that? Because Halloween was this recent one was released through Miramax and Blumhouse and Rough House Pictures and all that. So who, you know what I mean? Who picks up that? Like, is Miramax still an entity, like with all the Weinstein stuff? I guess probably, maybe because the Weinstein company like dissolved, but I don't know the ownership of Miramax. But anyway, the reason I was bringing up because this kind of rolls into Universal's deal with, I don't know if it was AMC, I don't remember what theater chains, but where they can release their films to streaming like 17 days or something. It's like 3 weeks.
Yeah, 17 days after the debut.
Yeah. And it used to be 3 months.
Yeah, so it'd be interesting to see how that shakes out, and to see if more companies go to that approach. Because I think the thing is with not that everybody only watches like the big tentpole movies, but something like Tenet or Avengers or whatever, if they like the VOD numbers would be like a third or fourth of what they make in the theater, they're not going to do that because that's losing money. So I think there's a middle ground of the types of movies that you can make good money doing from home.
See, the pro about the home movies is you have two audiences of people. The audience of people that never intend to go see a movie in theaters ever. And the fact that you can VOD it quicker when it's hot and it's still being talked about, I think could generate revenue along with the theater crowd. Because those are different crowds.
And you also have the factor of you don't have to hit the same. Granted, we're not going to hit those same numbers because just the factor of families going to see films and it's one rental versus 5 movie tickets. But they also don't have to pay the theater chains. The theater chains aren't getting any of the cut of that basically. So granted, the VOD distributors are, but it's not as big of a cut. So they can weigh their options with certain releases. I think it's just going to be I think it's just going to pack more films into that VOD space that were there before. Now it seemed like there was a hard divide, and I feel like it's going to be a gray area where sometimes you may have a film you didn't expect to hit straight to VOD, or it's probably going to be a wider range now.
I could see because a lot of times they release the big name horror films sometimes in October. And then remember they used to release the Saw films in October. You can look at the box office and during the month of October, the trend line is way up here. And then November 1st, it drops off a cliff. So maybe there's some movies where they're kind of time specific like that. They can time it so they get all the majority of the revenue from theaters. But then November 1st or 2nd, then it goes to VOD and you get all the people. But
yeah, if it's Universal and they're putting a horror film, put it out in the middle of September. That way, the first week of October, they can be in theaters and VOD. And then people can buy it at home or rent it for Halloween,
It's too that they could do with that. There's a lot of holiday movies were released around, Christmas movies are released at Thanksgiving.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then by the time Christmas is here, you have it on VOD and people are going to get that to have it on in the background.
Well, so the unfortunate thing I think that you'll run into some is if they're using the same pricing structure where it's $10 to $20, so it's $20 to rent something that's a new first run movie, because that's how much The Invisible Man was when they put it on rental services back in April or March, whatever. Julie and I rented it and watched it. I think a lot of people are just going to pirate it, unfortunately. And
there's always going to be that. It's always. And now
there's. But the thing that makes it different than, say, 10 years ago was 10 years ago when you pirated, somebody had to go to a BitTorrent site and download it on their computer and use it. But I'm saying, but now they have the stupid Amazon Fire TV sticks or use the Kodi app or whatever.
Yeah, but I don't
so our aunts and uncles are pirating films.
Yeah, but they've been doing that for 2 or 3 years through the Fire Stick. I don't think that coming to the theaters to this
basically
change that much because those people would be going to theaters anyway.
Well, but the catch is the second you can watch something on a screen at home, it's pirated. So with movies in theaters, it's only cam copies where people have a camera in the theater itself. But you'll be getting high quality copies much sooner when people can just use a screen recording system. And
that market's always going to exist. There's always going to be those people, but there's also a larger group of people that will. Yeah, I mean,
we'll just pay to watch
we'll pay to do it. Like, yeah, you're always going to fight that, but yeah, it is going to be interesting to see the strategies change. I hope theater chains don't die, but.
Well, speaking of pirated movies, when I was in high school, we watched Coach Carter in my English class, and it was a pirated version that somebody had taped and then put into a DVD because we were watching. The teacher was like, "It's not pirated. It's not pirated." But people would get up in the theater and watch.
Well, and two, those bad copies were a lot more acceptable when you're watching on a standard def TV.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Versus,
funny.
Yeah.
I remember the teacher arguing with us that it wasn't pirated, but you could watch people get up and go, whatever, come back. And it's like, that's not an actual movie. Yeah. I just remember Coach Carter.
Yeah, so we'll have to wait and see all of the theaters. I mean, it's basically going to see how many of the theater chains can survive. And with these like VOD windows shrinking, how I would assume that more big releases will go to that. But it's stuff we'll to see play out over the next couple of years as people try to bounce back from all this quarantine and lockdown stuff. But I guess we can kind of get into just the stuff we've been watching. I know, Derek, something that you watched that I watched as well was the new Unsolved Mysteries on Netflix, which is a little bit different format than the original. So far,
how did you feel? Okay, the new format is okay. Just to cover the bases, if you haven't watched Unsolved Mysteries ever, and I feel like people that would listen to this podcast probably haven't. But anyway, you had Robert Stack as the host. It was segmented, so you usually would have, on average, 3 cases, and sometimes up to like 5. So average is at 3-4 cases a show. Every now and then they do a special where you might have an hour-long one that covered one particular case. But the new one, and they did a lot of reenactments, which they used the actual people involved in the crimes if they could get them. So you'd have like the poor, like mom and dad or brother or friend of this person that had a heinous crime committed against them acting out what happened. But the new one is more shot like a documentary. So the only thing that is Unsolved Mysteries about it is the name, but not anything else, which doesn't mean it's not good. It's just kind of like to me, it's like they were able to get the naming rights and a couple of the people that were originally associated with it, but brought it into a modern audience, but you kind of lose the charm that the original had.
Well, I think part of it, because I saw a lot of people when it finally hit streaming were complaining because the format changed. So it's much more of a traditional, modern day true crime type format. So there's a lot of drone footage over the locations things happen. There's a lot of sit down interviews. There are slight reenactments. So they don't go because the original one was known for like the really cheesy acting and, bad effects and blowing up a car and stuff. So the new one reenacts things, but just like very specific small elements. And it's not really showing faces and things like that. It's more of like somebody went to a party and a fight broke out and they'll have like some brief, video of like people shoving each other or something. So they do just very small amounts of reenactments. It's more of just like an aid to the storytelling versus the old one would straight up make little short films that they would intersperse in the episodes. But I think part of it is in the modern era that would be seen, I think, is much more insensitive if there's somebody who died mysteriously and they had this really cheesy reenactment versus having it more, like I said, just a sit down interview where they're recounting information and going to all the various sides of a story and then cutting in, like if it exists, like news footage or things like that. Like they made it much more of a contemporary series while still, I think, choosing the same type of stories they would have done originally, just a little bit more. I don't know. It's not as cheesy as the original.
More respectable, but loses the flair and the fun.
Yeah. Because I think the one thing though that helped it be respectful original was that you had Robert Stack, who had a certain amount of like gravitas with him, so that kind of helped make it seem respectful. And I get that they didn't want to do a new host, because they tried it before and it didn't really work out. And because I cannot think of the actors, Dennis Ferreira, he had done
Pereira.
Ferreira, he had done it, like late 2000s, early 2010s, and it just wasn't the same. They do have a nice little nod to Robert Stack in the beginning of each episode. But I guess for me, as like someone who loves Unsolved Mysteries, I can respect both formats. But to me, the way I feel with the new one is it's kind of, to me, like a one-time watch. Like, I watch the episode one time, but I don't really want to go back and watch it because with it being more straightforward and it's just kind of depressing. Where the old one, while it could be, in some of the cases were horrible, the fact that you had Robert Stack to break it up and you had the reenactments, I think makes it more like bingeable or just rewatchable. Whereas this to me isn't. But all the cases were really great. I mean, they were all very interesting, and it seems like they've gotten a lot of leads out of them.
Well, because Julie was talking about, she didn't expect to, for a couple of them to make her cry, because they are legit things about, because the show was originally also like they had the supernatural and the UFO episodes, like the ghost and UFO episodes that were the reenactments were cheesy as hell. Because I was the other day, the entire series is on Tubi, the streaming service for free. And I was just watching some of them the other day, and there's one about a couple or like this family lived in the house, and it's like this weird story because the guy had a 16-year-old bride. I'm like, well, how old was he? I mean, this was in the 90s or something, or the 80s. But then like she was possessed by a demon.
That guy with the glass.
Well, the little bit heavier guy that had the 16-year-old bride, where she supposedly she got possessed by a demon and was like straddling him in bed forcefully or something. And then so it's like kind of goofy ass stuff where it's like, I don't believe a second of this. But so the producers, they released 6 episodes so far. And I think there's another 6 coming out later in the year. And so in this original batch, there's one episode that is a UFO or supernatural thing. So it's 1 out of the 6. And they said in the second batch, there's a ghost story that's not a traditional ghost story. Because I think, because it's a mixture, it's like this weird thing of, it's a mixture of things that are entertaining, while also what are stories we need leads on that have been cold for 20 years that we can't get any progress.
Okay, the one thing that was weird about the original Unsolved Mysteries is you would get the case like you talked about where it was kind of goofy with the guy and his girlfriend, the parents in the house with the ghost, and like he's essentially being like seduced by a demon. So it's kind of goofy. Then the next case will be some horrendous child murder case. So you're up here kind of like, oh, this is funny. And then it's like the most depressing, sad case of all time. And then it's just over. So I do kind of like that this one is, it doesn't put you up here then down there. It's kind of just all bad as far as what you see and hear. I am excited for the ghost episode though, because I love it. But the one thing is you also had Lost Loves, and I'm glad they're not doing that, because Lost Loves is like somebody, apparently a bunch of kids got sold in America in the 20s, 30s, and 40s. So a lot of these people were looking for their siblings because they were like sold or...
Were they sold through Wayfair?
Yes, they're sold through Wayfair. No, there's like one woman that like, there's like 3 different cases of a woman in Tennessee, I think, that had sold kids on the black market, and they all got tied back to her. And it was different families, but apparently that was like a huge thing back in the day because people just made up everything.
Well, I guess with the Lost Loves, there is Facebook now and Google, so...
Facebook and Google and Ancestry.com, and DNA testing is way more available. So the mystery of that is a lot easier to figure out. Like I said, just getting on any social media or I don't know.
Yeah, the internet could find the Lost Loves person in like 2 hours after the episode aired.
Plus, with Craigslist connections, they don't,
Yeah, I mean, like, so I think that the new episodes were entertaining, and I enjoy, like, so it's too, like, a big tell to me of, like, how well something worked for me is, do I spend time after watching it looking into it? And I have followed like the subreddits that are about the new episodes and seeing like what's going on. I listen to podcasts with some of the producers, and they've talked about some of the follow-ups they've got on some of the cases. And then like one of the cases, like they probably, based on when they were shooting it, wouldn't have known how timely it would be, because it was about, you know, racial inequality and stuff like that. And it's just like something that's even more resonant today with everything going on in the world.
That's one, not to get into any of the cases, but that's one of the ones that kind of upset me the most of all the stuff I'd watched, just because of everything that led into it. If you haven't watched it, I mean, there's 6 episodes. They're all extremely interesting. The ghost one, or the UFO one, to me was probably the least interesting. But for me, that's because you come off of the episode before it, which is, if it's one, I think it's the racial kind of one, and it's very upsetting. And you come off of that low to the UFO one, and I just couldn't get into it because of what I just watched.
Did you watch them back to back? You watch them back to back?
Me and my wife, me and Courtney just streamed up. We watched all of them.
So you could it'd probably be better to watch them, you know, slowly or out of order or something. Yeah.
Watch them not, because there's a couple of cases that are just they're emotional. I mean, you see what happens, and it takes you to a real low, and then you go to the UFO one, which is not as deep or as dark. I just couldn't get into that one as much.
Well, yeah, too, like, because we watched 1 or 2 of them outside on the projector and like watched it over the course of a weekend. So we didn't watch them all right after another. But yeah, like I still think they, even if, and the other thing is, like, Julie has some coworkers that she was talking about it on a call, and they're like, what's Unsolved Mysteries? So there is a subset of people that do not know what it is or do not know that name brand, and they'll watch it because it's on Netflix, because it's in the format they're used to. But if it was in the old format, they would be like, what is this? This is cheesy.
But, you know, it's funny because, you know, I'm 30 and you all are 35. So we're all kind of grew up.
I'm 34, like Derek. I'm 34.
Oh, you mean, okay, sorry. But we all kind of grew up, and, you know, my wife, she's younger than me. She's 4 years younger than me. So, but we're all kind of grew up watching it. So it's kind of funny to me that somebody could be in our age range and have not seen it, because it's just something I was so used to watching.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
Well, let's see. So before we get into Con Air, so some other things. So I watched quite a few things. So I'll go through all these just kind of quickly. So In the Tall Grass, it's a Netflix original. It's based on a Stephen King, Joe Hill story. It's directed by Vincenzo Natali, who did Cube and Splice, and has directed a bunch of TV. I think he did some Westworld and Hannibal and stuff. So a director whose work I generally liked. And it has Patrick Wilson, who's in everything. I'm trying to think if there's any other big actors. It's where, you know, a brother and sister are on a road trip, and they stop and they hear a kid. When they stop to do something, they hear a kid in a cornfield, and then they go to try to find him, and then they get, you know, when you're in the cornfield, there's like a scene where they're trying to find where they're at because they can hear each other, but they seem to be moving sides when they're talking. So they both jump in the air at the same time and see each other. It's like, oh, there you are. And then they jump again and they don't see each other, and they're super far away. So it's like things move around in the cornfield, and there's Stephen King stuff going on. So it's an interesting setup. But I had a hard time getting into it. Like, it wasn't my jam. And part of it was we watched it on the projector outside, and the cicadas were really loud, and that took a little bit out of it. But it was also just kind of one of those limited location movies where they probably had a relatively modest budget for what it was. Because it mostly takes place all in a cornfield, and there's like a church that they can kind of go to. And then, so they probably had it, you know, modest budget, not a ton of time. It was something where we didn't really get into it by the end of it. Like the direction it went, there's a little bit of a time loop element to it that didn't make much sense. Like when you're watching it, you're just kind of like, okay, but when you sit back and think about it, it's like, wait a minute, how does that make any sense? So, not terrible. but not something I would say is like a must watch or nothing I'm really upset that I kind of sat on for a year because I think it came out last year around October. So that was In the Tall Grass. I finally watched the movie Frozen, so the Adam Green one.
There's the actual like kid Frozen movie.
Yeah, so hopefully nobody rented Frozen and then just turned it on and left their kids there, because so the Adam Green, like, so the director of Hatchet and whatever, that's the one where people get stuck on a ski lift after hours at a ski place, a ski resort, on like a Sunday night. So there's nobody that'll be coming there for days. So kind of like one of those single location lockdown movies. And it was from like 10 years ago. It was like 2010 or 11 or something. So it wasn't anything new. I just had, for whatever reason, not watched it. And it had Sean Ashmore, who is from the X-Men movies, as Iceman. And I think he's been on other stuff since then. And, for like one of the single location movies, there was like the Ryan Reynolds one where he was in a coffin underground. Then there was, years ago, there was a Colin Farrell phone booth movie where he was in the phone booth. So the Frozen, like, it was all right. Like, I know it got like hyped up at Sundance when it came out, I think. Like, it was enjoyable enough, but because I think Corey had done a review of it for the site early on when we first started the site up. So I think it's probably his Adam Green's best movie, because the Hatchet movies are just kind of like wild, crazy slasher movies, more in the mold of like the later Friday the 13th movies, kind of. But I was like, well, it's super hot outside. It's 95 degrees. I'll watch a movie set in snow. And I watched it, and there was like some gross out stuff with gore and things like that. But it was just it reminded me of that era of the downbeat ending, just to be downbeat. It seems like all the Adam Green movies kind of do that. They kind of have like the downbeat ending where stuff happens seemingly just out of. It's one of those things where I guess it works more in a slapstick slasher than a movie you're supposed to take more seriously. So I enjoyed it, but it wasn't anything that I'm like, oh, if you haven't seen it, you absolutely have to go back and watch it. But it was on Tubi as well.
I may own a copy of that, but I probably bought it around the time, and I've never watched it as well, because I was like, I don't want to watch somebody stuck on a ski lift and I've just never been in the mood for it, so I've never watched that film.
Well, because like there is some of it outside of that, but the vast majority of the runtime, at least 75%, is on the ski lift. Around it.
I mean, the trick to some of those is to not lean, thinking from a filmmaker perspective, not lean too much on, we can do one location, is to try to mix it up with flashbacks or something, because, it can be boring if it's literally just one location. There was a mutual follow of mine, they're an editor, but they do like TV, and I just was seeing what else they had done. They'd edited this feature film, but it was about two guys and stuck in Vietnam around the mines, because they couldn't move. And it was on like, Prime or something. I'm like, I was just trying to see their talent at editing. And I scrolled through a little bit just on my phone real quick to see what the film was like. And it looks like 20 minutes in, they get stuck there. And then I kept scrolling, and it was the rest of the movie, they're standing there in the same exact spot, just looking at each other. And it's just night or day. And I'm like, oh man, that would be exhausting to shoot too. Like, I'm sure you could get through it fast, but that just seems like a challenge to make very interesting.
So let's see. So other stuff I watched. So something I would definitely recommend is Palm Springs, that's on Hulu. It is Andy Samberg, The Lonely Island and Saturday Night Live and all that stuff, and Brooklyn Nine-Nine. And it is a time loop movie. So, In the Tall Grass and that movie, seeing them within a few weeks of each other, I think probably hurt In the Tall Grass to Julie and I. But it is a comedy, like a high concept comedy, with drama elements and stuff in it. I love that movie. It was one that Hulu acquired at a film fest, I think, for like a record amount. It's one of those things that I feel sad for Andy Samberg this didn't hit theaters, because if it was a normal summer and this was in theaters, I think it would have made money. I think it would have gotten a good reaction, because everybody seems to enjoy it. I think it's like the most watched original film on Hulu, which they're not known for their films. I think they have some TV series and stuff, but I really enjoyed that. It was a nice change of pace. The basic idea is it takes place at a destination wedding in Palm Springs, like out in the desert. And there's a cave that you can go into. If you go into it, then it makes you live in a time loop. And then it's just about, if you have seen anything about it, I don't want to spoil anything. I think, but it's just, it's a very enjoyable movie. And even though everybody's like, oh, it's just Groundhog's Day with this, it's different enough. I mean, I think they said that, like, I was listening to the podcast, with Jeff Goldsmith, like on the screenwriting, and they're talking about initially didn't even have the time loop element in it. They had added that in later. And, it's basically like in the world of, let's say, Groundhog's Day, Palm Springs, like, would have taken place. I'm trying to remember how that, like, I don't want to spoil it, but like, there's enough to it that it does something fresh with the concept. And I definitely recommend it. And I really enjoyed that. If you have Hulu, it's on there, so you have to pay for it. So it would be a movie that would be worth paying to go to the theater to see if theaters were open and in normal operation.
Are they in a loop longer than in Groundhog's Day?
Yeah, I mean, because basically, like I said, I don't want to spoil it.
Do you know how long the loop was in Groundhog's Day? It was 10,000 years.
Or maybe, I don't know, maybe it could be similar.
Yeah, Groundhog's Day was, it was 10 years. The original plan was having track for 10,000.
Okay, so it's more than the original Groundhog's Day.
Sorry, 8 years, 8 months, and 16 days.
Okay, well, at least one of the characters, seemingly. Yeah. So you have that. So Palm Springs on Hulu, definitely recommend. It's just super fun. And, a good break and distraction for this summer. Let's see. Shirley, watch that. That's on Hulu too. That's about the author Shirley Jackson, who wrote The Haunting of Hill House. It has Elizabeth Moss in it. And it's just kind of about her and her husband. So she's an author, her husband's a professor, and like a young grad student who wants to be a professor, and his wife move in with them to stay for a while and help them out. So it's more of like it's not a horror film at all. It's all just a drama. It's very well acted. I think it's like a festival hit, which I could definitely see. I was kind of annoyed by the way they shot it, because there was a lot of really close, tight shots from the side. And it felt really like, I don't know if anyone else watched the show Handmaid's Tale that Elizabeth Moss was in, but it felt like that, where a lot of times it's just artsy to be artsy. Mm-hmm. And I was like, they have all this awesome, because it's like set in the 50s or 60s. So it's like they have all this awesome set design, but it's a close up, so you don't see any of the detail they put into these sets. So the acting, it was really good. It's one of those movies where at the end I was like, wait a minute, what? So what actually happened? I don't no. So it was fine, but it definitely, like, Palm Springs is the one I would say go watch on Hulu. Shirley's a completely different type of movie, and it kind of makes her life seem sad. But it's a drama that was on the film festival circuit, so you can check that out. And then there's also The Rental, which is available to rent. And then Derek's showing a cat there. But yeah, so The Rental is kind of a killer cast for the type of movie this is, because it has Dan Stevens and Allison Brie. So Dan Stevens from The Guest and Legion, and then he was in like the Beauty and the Beast and a bunch of other movies. And then Allison Brie was on Community and Glow on Netflix and other stuff. So kind of like an A-list cast for the type of movie this is. but I was left disappointed by it. I think it's got decent reviews on Rotten Tomatoes for this type of film. You know, like the last time I looked, it was like in the 70s or 80s or something. This to me is kind of like a character drama with a slasher tacked on to the last 20 minutes. And then the drama elements are what I cared about, more so than the slasher stuff, because it was done in a way that there really wasn't any tension. Because the whole thing about a successful slasher, or at least in a lot of cases, like the Michael Myers thing, like you see him in the background and you build up tension of what's going to happen. As opposed to this one, everything felt very sudden and just kind of happened without any build up. And then something happens, like, surely this isn't what I was like, oh no, that's exactly what happened. Okay. So it was just one of those movies where if it had just hung on the drama side of it, and then like it was another one of those deals where nobody else watched the movie Open House on Netflix, right? That I had talked about. So it felt at the end of it kind of like that to me, where like the setup kind of felt similar. Like people, like, I don't want to spoil everything for it if you do want to watch it, but it feels pointless. Like there's no real reason to it, and there's no like you don't really get any release from it or no like logical conclusion to the story. You just kind of have the situation occur. And then there's like kind of a post credits or end credits thing that's almost kind of funny out of context. So I was excited for that because, you know, there's not much new coming out, and it had actors in it I really liked, and it's directed by Dave Franco, who's married to Alison Brie. But I just kind of came away disappointed because Julie watched it with me and we got done. She was like, that was stupid. Or at least like, if you want to watch a slasher, I think it did this weird thing of trying to toe the line between being like a serious drama with slasher elements kind of tacked on versus going one way or the other. And I've seen other people in reviews call it like a modern day remake of I Know What You Did Last Summer. And it's like, there's kind of an element where that makes sense as a descriptor. But even that movie did a better job with the slasher elements and the drama and getting you invested in the characters. So, you know, not terrible by any means. I think it's better than Open House, that movie on Netflix that was heavily derided, but I just felt like they had a lot of missed opportunity based on the cast they had. Especially considering, you know, you had like Dan Stevens, who's been in The Guest, which was kind of a low-ish budget thriller movie, and they didn't even go for that because I had thought the movie was a thriller based on the description, and then it kind of went away from that because there was no thrilling setup. Because your thriller is you put characters in these situations that raises your pulse, and this movie really didn't do that. So
Did
that
it
was a little
lower
bit
your pulse?
Yeah, well, because it's something, if you get a situation that gets set up and then immediately concludes, it's like, well, there was no build up there. There was no cat and mouse. It was just, I guess the idea is it would be shocking. And I think maybe some of the reviewers who are reviewing this movie don't watch significant amount of horror films, so the horror elements were surprising to them.
Well, I mean, too, when it's marketed kind of as a horror film, like, and then it's not that surprising by the end of it. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, well, I think
you're waiting for that element to happen.
Yeah, I mean, so I was a little bit disappointed with it because I don't usually watch trailers. I just see a little bit of word of mouth and just go watch something. So yeah, like good cast, like it's well acted. I just thought it didn't really pay off on its concept. And it, you know, it's kind of an Airbnb thing. Luckily, those haven't been done to death yet. But I know there's probably a crap ton of short films about that, because then we did the short film about an Uber or Lyft or whatever ride, and there's about 1 billion of those now and movies about it. So I think Airbnbs are the next thing they're going to be heavily used as a plot device. But in real life, those are all failing because people took out second mortgages to make a house just for Airbnb that now they can't rent. So, but yeah, I think that was all the stuff I watched recently. So, anybody else have anything before we get into Con Air?
Only thing I've been watching is, just because I've been like working and I would have like 20 minutes to eat lunch and I would like turn on the Big Lebowski because I can just stop at any time. Like, you know, I don't want to start a new film and watch 15 minutes of it or 20 minutes. I've been watching that on loop as I do sometimes when I only have a few minutes. But I've been watching a lot of detective stuff. Speaking of that, like I watched some of Columbo because those are basically movies. Because they're like hour and a half episodes or hour and 20 minutes.
The new one?
No, there's just the old Columbo with Peter Falk.
Or what's the one that's on HBO? They have the new series. Is it Columbo?
That's Perry Mason.
Perry Mason.
Perry Mason was like a black and white show prior to.
Which one is Andy Griffith? Is that Matlock?
Yeah, Matlock.
All right, we should just do it. We should just become a Matlock podcast.
I mean, I used to watch Matlock and Murder, She Wrote with my great grandma. Yeah, I watched all and Unsolved Mysteries. And then so I was also, I turned on, I think I was going to turn on, the Paul Thomas Anderson mystery. What the hell is that? I've seen it twice now and I just watched it.
Oh, Inherent Vice?
Yeah, Inherent Vice. Have you guys seen that?
No.
With Joaquin Phoenix? Yeah.
I need to.
It's set in the 70s. It's pretty good. I like that film, but it wasn't free to stream anywhere. And that's like one of the Paul Thomas Anderson films. There's a couple of his I don't own, but I didn't own that. So then I turned on Under the Silver Lake again, which was by David Robert Mitchell, director of It Follows, with Andrew Garfield. I'd watched that before. And of course, being a mystery, it goes out there, but like mysteries are kind of always fun to watch a second time. Like Derek, you said you watched Knives Out recently, loved it, right?
Yeah, oh yeah.
I mean, like, and watching that film a second time, it's fun because then you see how characters are reacting and it's like they are more fun almost the second time when you're in on it, or where it's leading to, and you can look for clues and signifiers the director leaves and see how layered it is. So Under the Silver Lake. It is like, I think I've talked about it before, but like a Hitchcockian, it really is type mystery film where it is a lot of his character following people, women, trying to chase them down. But they also lean in the fact that he is like a probably late 20s, just kind of a perverted guy, like, typical pervert guy that, is supposed to be a dirtbag that like doesn't have a job. Like, there'll be a shot where these girls get out of the car and he's following them because he's intrigued by this mystery of the film. And as he's going along, instead of just the camera doing the Hitchcock, showing the actor seeing the woman and then starting following, he starts following, but then you get a shot of her ass because that's what he's actually looking at when he's following a woman. It's like they put you in his perspective. But it goes so crazy and so bonkers. Like it opens up with there's a dog killer in the neighborhood in Silver Lake, but that's like half of what the film is about. So that's where the mystery starts, that somebody's killing dogs. And then there's a woman that shows up in his apartment complex who he's also like perving on and staring at. And then she goes missing. So then he's wondering where this woman went. And it just starts evolving into this like wild story. But the reason I bring it up again too is because I enjoyed it. And I was like, I like that, but I had to read about it to really enjoy it because I didn't know exactly where I landed, but I was entertained the entire time and I loved elements of it. But watching the second time, I absolutely like love that film, especially after doing some reading on it. But I would start watching at night in bed, and Nicole was trying to go to sleep because she had to work the next morning, but she was just like laying on her side, half watching it. And she ended up like watching 45 minutes of it because she was so intrigued by it. So I was like, I can just stop this. And because she was going to bed, and I was like, we can watch it later. Because she was like, what is this movie? And then we watched the rest of the next day. And she's like, who wrote this? Like, it's one of those films where like just insane stuff happens. By the end of it, I mean, she enjoyed it, I think, the entire time. She was intrigued and wanted to watch it all. And it's like over a 2-hour movie. But it is definitely, it goes places for sure. And then we watched Inherent Vice as well because it was on sale for $5, so I bought that and put that on. That film is not as wacky at all, but it has so many just great scenes. Because and I agree too. She was like, I'm kind of having trouble following the mystery in this film a little bit. But that is a film where you can just enjoy individual scenes because of the actors and the cast that's in it. Like Owen Wilson, he pops up, and he plays a character who is basically a rat and an informant rat, and had to leave his wife who who she was like a former druggie that had to get like new teeth because all of her teeth got messed up, and now she's like a drug counselor. Like there's just like so many different great characters and performances in that film. And yeah, it's not my favorite PTA film, but it's still good. It's definitely worth watching. But yeah, if you're in the mood for any sort of mysteries, and Sneakers too, I watched that again. That's a mystery kind of spy heist sort of film. So I was just kind of been in the mood for those. I think because those are like light entertainment mostly, and normally they are paced. That's the thing about those films too. Normally they're paced so well that there's always something interesting going on. There's always something pulling the viewer in, because sometimes you watch some films and you're just kind of sitting there and you're like, I don't know why this is happening, but I'm just kind of watching. You know what I mean? Like it may be the complaint against some of the art house horror films or whatever, where you're just kind of what was that film? They Come at Night, which I kind of like that film, but like where you're just kind of like, okay, I'm just here for the experience, and that's all they want me to do, really. But with mystery films, you're always involved, even if they're lesser than films. But yeah, so I've kind of been in the mood for something that's just going to pull me along, and I can just turn on and watch just 2 scenes of it, and it's something interesting. So basically, I've just been watching those, and then Con Air.
So Con Air, 1997. It was directed by Simon West, who also directed one of the Lara Croft movies, the Angelina Jolie ones.
And he did the Budweiser frog commercial. I think it was a sequel to the originals, though, and he is the only live action director to ever have his first 3 films break $100 million at the box office as well. He did Con Air, another one, and then Tomb Raider, and they all hit 100 million plus. Yeah, well, I think I guess he was a high-end commercial director. He was doing a sequel to the Budweiser Frogs commercial. They had to adjust him to a massive degree, because that was like one of the biggest things for like 3 years was the Budweiser commercial.
Well, it's funny when you think about Con Air. You have, with Nicolas Cage, obviously he's a star. You have The Rock, which came out, I think, the year before. And Face Off had to have came out in 97 or 98. It might have been 97. So you had those are like the 3 of the big Nicolas Cage movies that you think about, like in the 90s, as far as action goes. You got The Rock, Face Off, and Con Air.
They made him an action star. He was doing other stuff, like Raising Arizona, like a phenomenal film. But he was doing other stuff. But that was like, okay, he's making some money now.
Well, The Rock and Con Air were the Jerry Bruckheimer productions. Mm-hmm. And you watch like The Rock, and then you watch Con Air, and like it very much could have been both of them Michael Bay movies.
Oh yeah, it feels
because Con Air, it was very much the post, because Michael Bay had Bad Boys and The Rock, and I'm trying to remember if there's anything else in that period, but he had definitely like set like an aesthetic for like contemporary action films of the 90s. Like fast talking characters, and Nicolas Cage being utilized. But yeah, like Con Air. Yeah, like I rewatched it, it's like I kind of forgot about the era of action film where it's more of the you have like your moral right character you're following, and then the bad guys get their comeuppance completely, and it's very like straightforward. But this movie had some stuff. I was sitting there watching it. I was like, I don't know what to take away from this.
Well, a part of this movie kind of reminds me a little bit of, and I might be completely off base here, but kind of his character in a way is like Snake Plissken-ish, because like you could kind of see where he doesn't really care either way for a large part of it, because his goal is different than everybody else's. It is funny.
Yeah, except he is self-sacrificing.
Yes,
he's not like selfish, basically.
Yeah, he's not selfish.
He's not out for only himself.
Well, and the entire premise of the movie of an army ranger gets attacked by 3 drunks with knives and beer bottles outside of a bar, and then in self-defense kills one of them and goes to jail. That would never fly today.
Yeah, I would say now maybe at that point in time it would, but he would be the way that our world is now with America currently, that would never happen. Not in the way this movie portrayed. Like a guy who is an Army Ranger who has a pregnant wife who was being harassed by 3 drunks at a bar at the end of the night, and he kills one of them in self-defense. No,
with a knife.
Yeah,
like if you even have if the cops even sniff you having a knife, you're shot in the head. Yeah. And this was also too. Think about this. This was pre 9/11, so this is before a lot of the patriotism, pro-military stance in movies really kicked up a gear. Because this was more of the era, because it was post Desert Storm. So at that point, there was no major. I mean, there was like the stuff in Serbia and the Balkans, but the United States was not involved in that to a major degree. So the U.S. wasn't involved in any major world conflict at that time. So it's just such a different point in time to watch this movie. And there's like the Steve Buscemi character, where it's like, so he made a joke about eating a girl's head or something, and then they let him play with the kid. And you're like, what is the message from this?
William, I think the message is just buckle up, and have a good time. Dude, there's no message, because it's all about just, hey, it's all going to be a happy ending. Even Nick Cage's character, full spoilers, he had to get a kiss from the secondary female character. Like, it wasn't even his wife. Like, it's like it's almost like got the girl the kiss at the end, when it's like, she kisses him for saving him, but it's like, dude,
but the one thing I'll say about
would a male guard have kissed him? I'm not saying kisses or anything. Like, I have had, platonic female friends that, give kisses and stuff. Not that that's a big thing, but it being this type of macho man, and she gives him a little kiss on the cheek at the end because he saved her and all this stuff. Like, they even had to put that in when he still had a wife at the end of the film.
He saved her from a brutal rape.
Multiple times.
Hilarious, right?
Yeah.
I wonder if Danny Trejo regrets that role today.
I don't, because it was so. Think about the cast of this movie, though, real quick. Let's talk about the cast, because if you did this movie today in 2020, this would still be a good cast.
Yeah,
You have John Cusack, you have Nicolas Cage, Ving Rhames, Steve Buscemi, Danny Trejo. Who else I'm forgetting? Somebody. The main villain. Dave Chappelle's in there, which he's hotter now than he was then.
You said John Malkovich, right?
I did not say John Malkovich.
Yeah,
John Malkovich, and there's a couple other people that were just kind of like set piece people that you saw in a lot of '90s movies. But just that crew of guys right there would be more than enough to make you want to watch that movie. I think now they shot it. Michelle Rodriguez would probably be like the prison guard or somebody.
But instead of being chained up, she'd be killing people or something.
Yeah. But it's just interesting, like, for the most part, like, that cast would still be interesting in a movie today.
Yeah, I mean, it really is. Like, they just, like, did biggest Hollywood stars. Granted, not all of them were the biggest thing, but, like, a cattle call. Like, who wants to come make this big, dumb movie and get paid a crap ton of money?
Now, let's don't forget, this was Oscar nominated, too.
For what?
So, the song, okay. But, hey, that's still an Oscar nomination. That movie had more Oscar nominations than MCU did at one point. All right,
that's fine. I'm not going to disagree. I'm going to say this film is more entertaining than some of those MCU films.
Yeah. Well, and because one thing I like about this is, like, we can look at. Let's talk about the trifecta of Nicolas Cage films. Like Face Off.
We're gonna have different perspectives on that, I think. But go ahead.
Yes, but like Face Off had a general concept of, like, the face off, and he goes in underground. He has to be the guy that he hates forever, his entire life, that, like, essentially ruined his life. And then in The Rock, again, you had, like, a clear message, like, terrorists took over hostages. Sean Connery. And, like, this one is just kind of like they crash a plane in the desert, and then there's a Colombian drug lord who has an airplane in a hangar waiting. So then they blow that up, and then John Cusack hooks the Corvette to the back of the airplane, and it's flying off in the air. And
no, it rips it. The cable rips into it and accidentally grabs it.
It grabs it. And it's flying off like it would. And then you have one prisoner that is, I guess, would be transgender. And Nicolas Cage goes to punch him, but then he slaps him instead. He's like, ooh! And he's wearing a dress. And,
I mean, it's
and Nicolas Cage is also for 1997 and currently like ripped in this movie, which is probably the only time he looked like that in a movie I can think of.
Well, then too, you had John Cusack in the beginning being casually racist.
There was a ton of racism in this movie.
Yeah, it's full spoilers. Like Ving Rhames' character, they talked about he like did he bomb or try to bomb an NRA convention? And he was
something.
It was like there's so much rapid fire. Like here's all the background.
Character backgrounds. It's just like the Suicide Squad intro thing. Suicide Squad, like, hey, we sing Con Air.
But like somebody who is anti NRA and racism and pro Black people's causes would today be on the opposite side of the spectrum and not be like the villain you laugh at for, John Cusack being very dismissive and, talking down to. In today's world, it would probably be flipped and be a character that was more on the right side of things and would join in with Nick Cage, because it doesn't make sense somebody that had those ideals would fall under some white criminal as like the number two.
Yeah, and the one thing, there's just so much stuff all over the place, because you think about on Con Air that Nicolas Cage's character is released. When the movie starts, he is done. His sentence is over. But he still goes on the airplane, and they're flying him there. And then they get the worst criminals in the world. And he went to the worst. Okay, he's a military veteran. What he did would be justified. And they sent him to the worst prison in the United States of America with the worst criminals. And like, there's like the entire montage of like him like just working out and reading letters from his daughter, which is just really, they just took wherever they wanted and it worked, but they just threw it, And
my daughter sent me a letter on her birthday.
Cage has a Southern accent and a mullet,
a balding mullet at that.
A balding mullet, yeah.
And like his Southern accent is very much in the same realm as all the British actors in The Walking Dead. It's like, my name is Cameron Poe, and my daughter is the most important thing to me. It's
those stand out too when the dialogue is so trite and bad, which was most everybody's dialogue in this film. Like, I think John Malkovich did a great job with his, because I mean, it fit his characters, his delivery and all that. But most of it was just all these like criminals, like, Steve Buscemi, like waxing poetic and stuff. Like, it's just all this cheesy.
I will say though,
characterizations.
I wish they could have made a reference to Steve Buscemi's character in this being the same character he was in Billy Madison.
That's what I was wondering. I was like, this is post Billy Madison and Fargo, but I feel like this is, even though he was more of a madman in Fargo, this feels more like in line with the Billy Madison.
Also, Steve Buscemi's character, which they also stole from, is it the New Kid, the comedy where the little skinny guy, like, I can't think of
the new guy or whatever.
The new guy, yeah, because they took a scene from that. And
DJ Qualls.
Like, yeah. They have Steve Buscemi. And they come out and they hook him on the things, and he's in the mask, and it's kind of like a scene from Hannibal.
Well, I was gonna say, in this movie, he's kind of played like a comedic Hannibal Lecter.
Yeah.
But yeah, so you had all the elements you've talked about. Like we said, you have the friend who he's in jail with, who's the diabetic, who is like the sympathetic character. They never really tell you why he's in prison and why you should root for him, aside from Nick Cage befriended him because he gave him some of the hostess cake things his wife would give him. And when she visits,
I guess the only thing you can think of, the reason why you like him is, for one, he's obviously not a dirtbag when the shit hits the fan.
Yeah.
And two, like Nicolas Cage, given his background, probably wouldn't have befriended that guy if he had been like a really bad person that wasn't above redemption.
It was a gram of weed, and he was in there for 20 years.
Probably.
But
which would be this decade's version.
Yeah, I was trying to think of because in the movie, like you said, there's some stuff in there that probably wouldn't fly as well today.
Oh, absolutely not. It's terribly aged in that regard.
And
terrible for the time, but
there's a lot of racism in it, and it plays to comedic effect, but still, I don't know if you get Dave Chappelle to
do that same role today.
Same role today.
Yeah, even he's racist towards the Native American guy, because he's throwing out all that stuff. But it does feel like it's the most macho, coked up Hollywood execs in a room. They're all white. Being like, what's the most balls to the wall thing we can do? And they're just like throwing out, oh, let's make this guy racist and this guy racist and this guy racist because it's funny. And it's just like at level 10 on all those cylinders.
That doesn't make any sense. Is you have John Cusack, and you had the DEA guy that's there that owns the Corvette. And that guy's like such a prick the entire movie.
He's a great actor too. I love him.
He's a great actor. Because he's one of those guys, like, I don't know his name, but he's in a lot of stuff in the 90s. Yeah. But you've seen him,
he's also in the Alan Partridge movie. I can't remember which one it is, but it's in a radio station, and they have to fire somebody, and Alan Partridge gets them to fire him, and then he goes crazy and like takes hostages in the radio station and everything. It's great. Yeah.
There's a lot. One thing I like about this movie is only because I've watched a lot of Family Guy recently. Like Family Guy plays on a lot of 90s jokes, and I really wish I could have wrote these down, but there's like where they make a line, and it's only in the 90s, and it's just like, see, and it's just like, those jokes work, and it's like, they're not funny. I don't even know if they're funny then, but they're like so diehard about it. And
it's just the laziest, easiest. That gets enough of a reaction that it's something rather than nothing.
But
something else.
Corvette's destroyed at the end, and he's like, I know a good body guy. It's like, it's not. And
so another funny thing when you think about, because I'm watching it, and I was like, wait a minute. So the actor that plays his friend, McKelty Williamson, was also Bubba in Forrest Gump.
I thought he was. Yeah, I was going to look that up.
And then he's also in. I watched the show Justified that he was on as well in a role. So
apparently that Bubba role like screwed him, because he was saying that he played that so well, everybody assumed that's who he was.
Yeah.
And he had a hard time getting any other roles, apparently, because of that.
So he went from Bubba, like from the Bubba role in Forrest Gump being kind of the number 2 to a white lead, to doing the same thing here.
With just less to do, actually.
And I was also thinking, this film, everything's at a 10. It's like, oh, the worst criminals, just all the stakes, what's happening. And then, but they also throw in, I need my insulin shot. Like, that's also like, I get it. You don't want this guy to die, but it's the most boring everyday stakes. Like, there's plenty of people that would die without their insulin slots. It's nothing that creative, you know what I mean? But it's like, there's like cars behind planes. Like, I need my insulin shot,
Okay.
It's just,
but not only does he need the insulin, of course, right when he's about to get the shot is when the prison break happens in the airplane. And then it gets stomped.
It's just like one guy needing one simple thing, when all these like comically outrageous plans and these criminal plans, like everything is going wrong around him. Like I want the film focused on him, where he's just like, I just need to get that damn shot.
But like, if he didn't need the shot, Nicolas Cage could have just bounced when they were meeting the 3 prisoners.
Plot wise, yes, it worked. And
but that's the entire driving force of this
movie.
a
smart device, but at the same time, the device was something so simple and everyday compared to all the other events that happening in this film.
Not knowing what his character is in prison for, like if he killed some people or was like did stuff to a child.
I'm never like that in films though. I think unless the film's explicit that they're a bad guy, this type of film, you're just supposed to go along with them, because most audience members, they like being with the bad guys. They love, at least guys, most guys, the stereotype is that guys love heist films. You know what I mean? And plenty of women do too, but guys almost get criticized for that, of like, hey, the heist films, like guys love watching the criminals because, most people want to commit crimes as long as they're harmless, somewhat harmless crimes. And, in the way they're portrayed in films, like, I want to like drive a car, like run away from cops. You know what I mean? And it'd be in a car chase.
Like baby driver.
It's the same thing.
Well,
it's that desire to. So in this film, you're already kind of, and like it's the same thing, same time, John Malkovich, terrible. He's a terrible racist person in this film, but you're always like, are they going to get away with it? You know what I mean? It's always that element of you kind of want to see a plan work.
And to be fair, though, for some of the stuff, like with Malkovich's character, as atrocious as he is, he wouldn't let Danny Trejo rape the woman. That's like the one thing he's like not going to let him do. So that's where they throw that stuff in a good
character, even though he's also terrible. Like you got to have that, you got to have that mixture to make them interesting, even though they're terrible, because sometimes it's enjoyable to watch terrible characters on screen.
It is funny when they are dressed up as the guards interacting with the other prisoners and they see the Steve Buscemi character. He's like, well, this will be interesting. Like there's some humor to it because he's, acting like a person would.
Yeah.
But I think one thing too, that we're talking about things that are just off the wall in this movie, and let's go to Steve Buscemi's character, because when all this crazy shit happens and he sneaks out and finds a trailer park somewhere, there's a little girl playing with the doll in an empty pool, and then they got the whole world in his hands, and they do that one really super 90s like odd shot of like just around her face, like a music video. And it's like, where the hell is that from? There's nothing else like that in the entire movie.
Yeah.
And it's so bizarre.
I might have like turned away at that point, but I wish I would have seen that, because for me, that film, that moment was basically sort of a homage or remake, or at least inspired by, it seemed like it was Frankenstein by the lake, and the pool's there. And I don't remember if that shot is similar to any of the shots in the original Frankenstein or not, but I wonder if it was like a parallel to any shots.
In the context of the movie, when you're watching it, they leave it as a cliffhanger, like, oh, did he kill this girl? Or worse. And then they show you eventually she's like, bye, Mr. Whatever, man. But it's just like, what the hell is the point of it?
Was he reformed basically? By kindness?
I think what they did with him is I think that was kind of like where he turned a leaf, because like then he comes back and he never really does anything to help or hurt, but he's just kind of there. And then they have one of the actually funny parts of the joke, he talks about like the definition of irony is that there's a group of people dancing to a song by a band that was made famous because their airplane crashed, which is, Leonard Skinner is what they're referencing. But like, that was actually a good scene,
the other thing is, like, would at that point in time, would the group of people that have collected be dancing to Leonard Skinner? I don't think so.
I think so.
It's bizarre because again, you have a bunch of like hardened criminals. And this is the way it's portrayed in the 90s. You have a very flamboyant, and at this point, transgender wasn't a thing that people really talked about. So I would assume this character would be gay.
Well, back then it was still like cross-dresser or transvestite.
Terminology. So you want to be sensitive. So I guess this would be more of a cross-dresser, but it's for comedic effect. But then it's just a really weird thing,
Again, they just tried to throw everything at the wall that was like hanging fruit that they thought people would like giggle at. You know what I mean? And more people would giggle just at the concept of that.
That specific character was still handled a little bit more appropriately than some stuff that comes out today, sadly.
Oh yeah. Because nobody disrespected that character. There was like, oh, okay. Like that was it. That was, like John Malkovich, when he's talking to her, he just like puts the ammo in the dress.
I mean, is it more? Okay, violence against people is not respectable, women, but we're not the ones to be discussing this, but I'm gonna propose a question and we can stop it there. Instead of punching, I don't know what their preferred terminology was, but that character out, was he like, hey, maybe they prefer to be identified as a woman. I'll do the backhand because that's what I would do to a woman. You know what I mean? Like, was he being respectful in that regard? But regardless, they were playing that for comedic.
Yes, it was all played
you
for
slap
a
a woman. You know what I mean? You slap a woman. Like,
and it's not praising that portrayal. It's just simply saying since then, movies of this ilk in the past 5 years have probably played stuff similarly.
Yeah, because like in that movie, that's how that character was, and that's it. There was not like
there was no depth to it. It was a joke.
Yeah,
dog.
All the animal cameos. But and like this, I would love to. That there's some cocaine involved. I would assume in the writing of this movie from the massive amount of stuff that went on in it. Because like you give Nicolas Cage a mullet. And you put him in prison, and John Cusack is like an anthropologist or whatever he even was. I don't even know. And
John Cusack, he was an agent, but he was
an agent, but he was not with the DEA. And then they have the DEA agent that they snuck into the plane and gave the gun. And then Nicolas Cage gets him essentially killed, But just
himself killed when he pulls the gun.
Yeah, but then Nicolas Cage was like trying to talk him down a little bit, and then he, kind of.
So the writer Scott Rosenberg, who wrote Con Air, was also listed as writing Jumanji: The Next Level, Venom, Jumanji: Welcome to the Jungle. There's different TV series, Kangaroo Jack, Highway. Imposter, Gone in 60 Seconds, which makes sense. High Fidelity.
That's the John Cusack connection.
Disturbing Behavior.
I guess the adaptation of the book.
Episode of Tales from the Crypt.
I guess one thing I can give this movie credit for is I've seen it. I don't know. I'm sure we've all seen this movie a ton because I'm sure like this was probably on loop on TBS or TNT at one point in the day when we were younger. But you a lot of times you go watch these movies, and especially from like the time period that they're very hard to get through. They lack. Whereas this movie, I think John Malkovich's portrayal of his character, knowing what it is and kind of hamming it up in a good way, like he was definitely chewing some scenery, but it was in a fun way. I think he knew what he had, and he played like a good villain in the movie. He was fun on screen. And then you have enough people that, there's Danny Trejo for a little bit. There's Ving Rhames. There's Steve Buscemi. And it just was constantly moving. There's no dull point.
I wrote down a note about that, like where it feels like this is the point in the 90s when action films, it seemed like a lot of them, 70s, 80s, all the ones that when they started getting bigger budgets and the more trying to be blockbusters, post Jaws and all that, when they said, let's make an action blockbuster. This film feels like this, 90, maybe like mid 90s. This was almost like when I feel like they started perfecting the formula where there was no, even if the film wasn't quote unquote good or even smart or anything, they almost had a formula figured out, or they understood you needed a minute by minute something, something exciting. Because if you at least had that, you could at least get butts and seats. But at the same time, once you have that pace, and then you have a lot of films that pace that are empty, that is fresh for like 5 minutes. You know what I mean? Because these films, you can't send out a film like this today that's kind of just bland. But to be fair, though, if you have a stacked cast like this, you kind of can. I don't want to disregard them, and you have the amped up stuff, but I haven't seen the recent Fast and Furious. I did watch the Hobbs and Shaw, but for me, that was like, that was dumb and goofy, and it was like minute by minute action, and that's what I wanted. Sometimes you want those films, but it did feel like this was of that era when they started perfecting that formula and knew like, hey, we're going to throw a lot of money at this, but we know how to get our return.
Well, it's funny because you watch this movie and you're like, it's kind of ridiculous what goes on here, but then you think about Fast and Furious, and it's like, Fast and Furious is way more ridiculous.
Yeah, I was thinking when the car was behind the jet, they were like, and I was like, yeah, this is the craziest thing they could have done at the time. But if it was Fast and Furious, somebody would have had to hop out on the hood of the car, unhooked it, got in the seat, hit the button for a parachute, and then landed somewhere and beat the plane before the plane got
the
there.
other thing too that we haven't mentioned so far is this movie is very much in the Die Hard template of person in X scenario. So the right person in the wrong place.
They even reference Cusack when he talks, when they're in, when Nicolas Cage ends up, or Poe Dameron ends, which is funny that Poe Dameron's in Star Wars is kind of a similar character anyway. They play when he ends up in the airplane hangar with the Colombian drug lords and they have the shootout. That's exactly what Cusack's character says. He's like, you just happen to be the right guy in the wrong place all the time. The time.
I'll be right back. But you guys keep going.
Yeah, but it's just really funny how the Die Hard connection though, because it was very much the scenario of, because Die Hard was a cop that was off duty at a party when a terrorist attack came about. And then this is a former military guy that is on a airplane that gets hijacked by criminals, which is also similar to the Steven Seagal movie Under Siege, where he is a cook and they get taken over. So there was all these movies of the right person at the wrong place, like Die Hard, Under Siege, Con Air. I'm trying to think of other ones.
There was a ton of Die Hard ripoffs too, like direct Die Hard ripoffs.
So this was like the weird, like Die Hard through the lens of Michael Bay, or I guess Jerry Bruckheimer. And very enjoyable at the time. But it was,
it's still enjoyable now. It's definitely not aged well, and there are some racist and sexist undertones. Or it's not even undertones. The movie's pretty kind of racist.
Well, I don't think in today's world you'd have a popcorn summer blockbuster that casually throws in the threat of rape so willingly. Granted, like Game of Thrones does and stuff like that.
But that is because the popcorn blockbusters the action ones were R-rated back then. Now they're PG-13. They are the Fast and Furious. That's another reason why, because it was all about pushing that edge back then, because it was like the shock factor. And now at this point, we've seen so much and there is more sensitivity. And
another thing too is, the practical effects from this hold up very well, because watching this again, and I'm like, it was mostly all practical. Like there was, anything that was digital was very minor. And you could rewatch that and not have the cringe moments you would from the action films from 5 years later, where they had CG before it was quite ready for the big stage. Because, even though I love like Blade 2, you watch some of that CG and you're like, oh man,
that's very true. Yeah.
This is some like PlayStation level graphics.
The only not great footage in the movie was some of the scenes of the Corvette, because it kind of looked like in Grand Theft Auto and you used to do fly mode, and it was just but other than that, like for people to listen to it, use a hand motion, but like outside of that, but they didn't dwell on it enough, and it wasn't so bad. You could just tell it wasn't good. It just looked like they had like a Photoshop picture of the Corvette and they're just trying to make it look what it looked like. But even that was fine, because it was like 5 seconds of the film.
Well, and then you also, you had the very classic tropes of the law enforcement officials at each other's throats, who then by the end of the movie they've made up and they're okay. So there's all these kind of tropes that hit.
There's something else that's very 90s about this that would not happen today. Probably not, because it is played with sincerity, as the country song. What song is that? I can't think of it now.
They play like the beginning and the end.
Yeah. But anyway, country was at its height of its powers in the 90s. I'm sure this probably wasn't everywhere, but at least in Kentucky or in Louisville, maybe because I was younger and I was at the mercy of whatever. But I feel like I didn't listen to country voluntarily, typically, but I pretty much knew every major country music hit of that era. All the new country hits I knew, and now it is not popular. Country is not like the hot thing.
I think that
to play in these films.
I think that part of that is, in the 90s, there wasn't Spotify and Apple Music and all the different services and MP3 players. So people were listening to the radio more and were at the mercy of the top 40 hits. and the top 40 hits back then included more country in it than it does today.
Well, I think too, though, when you look at movies and because this is relevant because it was nominated for an Oscar for that song, which only got beat out by Titanic's Celine Dion song. So a lot of these movies in the 90s, I guess, structured around a song. Like they would have a song for it, and then that would be played in the movie multiple times.
The Will Smith title track.
And that's
I know. I was just thinking, man, I always think about how Men in Black 3 really needed,
for the Suicide Squad. He's like, we're Suicide Squad.
Yeah.
We're fighting Batman.
That's not a thing that movies really do anymore. Like the only movies I can think of that still do that are like the Bond movies. But that's just only because they play in the intro and it's never played again. Whereas this movie, like it plays when he first comes back to see his wife and the end of the movie and they're reunited. Yeah. Or like I think the song we know the most is from Armageddon with Aerosmith. I don't want to miss a thing.
Don't want to miss a thing.
Yeah, that's like the poster child for that.
Well, one film that they released recently that does that is Bad Boys 3. That's they play the Bad Boys song. Again, that's a product of the 90s. That is a film of the 90s. They named the film that song. I mean, I miss that too at times. I get it. You are taking less seriously, but can't we just have fun? You know what I mean? Like all those films had so many great, lot of, especially from the 80s. Like in the 80s, there was always a dance scene at the end of the movie, where the characters are dancing and having a good time. And there would be a little bit of that in the 90s.
The only two.
But now we don't even have the title track song they made for the film, like, Ninja Rap or, TURTLE Power, but it's like,
well, like the only, and I'm gonna use the MCU for a second because the only two like franchises in that still I remember use like big songs were like Iron Man and Guardians of the Galaxy, which are very driven by like Tony Stark is always AC/DC, so there's always AC/DC
or Iron Man, the song Iron Man.
Remember?
Yeah.
So, but like outside of that, like a lot of other stuff now is like orchestra and or like, but most of the time I can't think of a big movie that has.
Do you remember
now Sonic the Hedgehog? Who did that song for the new film?
I don't know.
I can't remember his name, but they did a whole music video for that and everything.
Well, do you remember the from the original Spider-Man film, the Nickelback and Chad Kroeger and the Saliva Nickelback did the hero song?
Yeah. Actually, Deadpool 2 had Celine Dion make the intro song. So I mean, but that is played in jest and not.
Well,
Wiz Khalifa did that Sonic the Hedgehog. Have you seen that music video?
No.
They go into like 8-bit, or the 16-bit Sonic, and then Wiz Khalifa and everybody else on the track is like running through the levels. That is, normally they show some of the movie in the music video, but they also do 16-bit digital versions of the movie scene. So like Sonic goes to a bar at one point because that's like a road movie. Like he's basically on the road through a lot of the movie. But they like to go to the bar and everything. It is a throwback. This is the rap song for this movie, and now we have a music video, and they played at the end of it and everything. Like my daughter loved that aspect of it,
Well, I think some of that stuff is fun because I think a lot of movies tend to take themselves like too seriously now. And while this is an action movie, it does take itself very seriously, but it's also goofy. So I don't know at the time if they meant for it to be goofy or just kind of.
Yeah, I think they knew. I think they knew what they were going for. I think they said we're not.
If you go back through all the Bruckheimer and Michael Bay stuff, a lot of that very much had the comedic elements peppered throughout, just because they knew in the audience people either needed to be laughing or paying attention to something on. They needed to be laughing or in awe of the action on screen. Man. So they just peppered a lot of stuff in to keep you having a reaction throughout.
One thing I kind of liked in this movie too, that I think about it, and again, just to go back to The Rock, is that Nicolas Cage's character is kind of like the Sean Connery character. And then the John Cusack character is essentially the Nicolas Cage character from The Rock. because like
more nervous to fight, and
kind of is only useful when it absolutely needs to be. And then you kind of have like the military scene in both of them where they get ambushed by the bad people. And
I was also wondering if Charlie Kaufman watched Con Air and then was like, I want to make a kind of a film about myself, but have Nick Cage in it, and then also a movie about John Malkovich where he plays himself and everybody, and John Cusack goes into John Malkovich's head. It could be John Malkovich. Did Charlie Kaufman's first little cinema streak happen because of Con Air?
Or was it coincidental?
Yeah.
One thing too, just in that movie, because you compare movies today versus back then, and back then they typically did have pretty specific memorable deaths for the main villains. Like Hans Gruber falling off the tower.
This one has
and RoboCop, the big wiggly arms as the guy falls out of the building.
This one felt like it was a Final Destination scene.
No, because it was like multi-layered. So he gets put on. He gets tied up on the ladder on the fire truck, and Nicolas Cage elevates it. So then when they're going, there's like the crosswalk or the skywalk. So he hits that and goes through the glass and falls on the ground. And initially, that's kind of underwhelming. But then he's on a conveyor belt, and it brings him up, and then it smashes his head.
No. He didn't just fall on the ground. He fell on the power lines.
He
gets electrocuted.
Yeah.
So this is the movie where we always talk about a slasher where the killer gets horrifically murdered.
Yeah.
This is kind of that, because he gets stabbed in the leg, and then he gets put on the fire ladder.
Yeah.
And they shoot him through that.
Yeah.
And then
to be somewhat hurt is like most action films, but this is absurd to absurd levels. And also a lot of times in action films, especially the ones that are softer on some regards, the heroes rarely murder or intentionally maim the villain at the end. It's always like, hey, the villain caused their own demise. We got to kill the villain, but the hero was going to help. The hero was going to help him out. No, Nick Cage was like, he's tied down. I'm lifting this thing up. There may be people up there, but I don't care.
It'd be hilarious if the sequel to this is after the aftermath of Con Air. They're like, so Mr. Poe, you broke X many laws. You're going back to prison for 10 years. Or how old's his daughter? 7?
Yeah.
He's going back to prison for 11 years, so she'll be 18 when
Go ahead, Derek.
I was thinking about this though. The movie starts, I'm trying to go through all the stuff that happens in this movie. Is that, they take the airplane over, they crash the airplane, dig the airplane out, fly the airplane off, recrash the airplane, steal a fire truck, and then they chase the fire truck and motorcycles. And there's just a lot of stuff that goes on in this movie. They start in Alabama and end in
insane,
Vegas. Yeah.
You could see they're just going to spend some time on a plane. If you hadn't seen the trailer, it was Con Air. It's a bunch of convicts on the plane. Okay. And it is not just that at all. They don't skirt. Again, we were talking about single location films. They don't skirt by that at all. I was thinking about a sequel to this film since you mentioned William. And, at the end of the film, he's hugging his wife and kids. And that's the happiest moment he will probably be able to have, that reunion there. And based on the way people sometimes don't want to go back into society after being in prison, and the high of before that he was in the service, so he probably saw some action based on how he fights. Then he goes to prison, probably got into plenty of fights. Then he went through this whole ordeal. Now is he going to this Pleasantville or this Edward Scissorhand normal suburban life, where he just needs a high of this action intensity and is just going crazy, mowing his yard and you know what I mean, picking his daughter up from school.
I had to guess
what insanity is going on in his head. And I want to see the film where he gets back into he starts doing criminal activities because he needs that high of getting chased by the police.
The in-universe idea would be that John Cusack's character becomes his handler, and he does operations for them, kind of like a bounty hunter or something, or like off. He gets paid to do missions. He's like a suburban Snake Plissken or something.
Yeah, I'd say that's
Jack Bauer.
It's just one of those movies like I kind of recommended just because like Nicolas Cage, and I was like, and I just watched Face Off and Snake Eyes the other day because I have a double feature Blu-ray. Which Snake Eyes is great. I kind of almost regret not having to watch that.
I was thinking like, oh man, have we done Snake Eyes?
No.
Oh, I was thinking like when I started watching this, I'm like, oh, I wonder if Derek's seen Snake Eyes because that's a De Palma film. I like De Palma stuff just for him, but Snake Eyes is cool.
Well, he's in a cheetah suit for it, and then it's out there. But I don't know. Like I really, it's one of those movies like, oh, watch as a joke, and then if you take away the racism and that stuff, it's a fun, enjoyable movie.
It is a very easy watch.
It's an easy watch, and it's one of those movies like I've watched a million times, and I get why because like, oh, there's good action. Because a lot of times in the 90s, you got bad action. But a lot of the action, it was pretty decent. Movie's pretty good. Like, this isn't, to me, as good. I think The Rock is probably the best, like, 90s action movie that I can think of. And maybe I put that on a pedestal, but that, to me, is, like, the top. And this isn't there, but it's still really good and enjoyable. I think this is easier to watch than The Rock. Because I think The Rock is a little bit harder because you actually have like, there's the stuff that happens to the soldiers that get ambushed, and it's a little bit different. That there's more, I think, at risk or at like
the stakes feel higher.
Yeah, the stakes are way higher in The Rock than in this.
Well, it is funny when you think about Michael Bay's career and The Rock. The villains are the United States military or members of the military.
Yeah.
And then in today's world, a lot of stuff he does is very pro-patriotic and very pro-military. So I doubt he would ever do that story again.
Well, also he's probably, the military's back in those Transformer films because they get their marketing in there. You know what I mean? So it probably has to come down to the economics as well of
if you
how
think about it now,
ingrained military is into Hollywood.
Wouldn't The Rock be almost more relevant now with its messaging, with just kind of how the military people got screwed over? And you think about that, and like just talking about Unsolved Mysteries. There's a case of the last POW. Read about that, and you see. Are you all aware of that?
Mm-mm.
Like, okay, Rambo 2 of all movies and 3 kind of cover this. Is like the POWs that they knowingly left over in Vietnam. Whether it be because they sent them on like under the table missions once the peace treaty was signed, or they just never negotiated for them. And you see a lot of that. And then you see like The Rock, and it kind of covers a little bit of that. And, I guess that was more Desert Storm era. But you're like, oh, okay, you kind of get it a little bit where they're coming from. Because The Rock to me felt more like kind of like a Metal Gear, only in that the villains at the end kind of made somewhat sense.
They had a code of honor.
They had a code of honor, and
the Ed Harris bad guy did.
Yeah, so Ed Harris did, and whereas Metal Gear was always really good about that, is the villains are always really bad until they're dead.
I mean, too, like like Liquid Snake, his whole thing was like Forgotten Soldiers. You know what I mean? Like he was building that, and then the Outer Heaven was all about a haven for soldiers, and Metal Gear Solid 3 is about how these characters are used by the government and thrown away, like the boss. You know what I mean? Like all of those are Peace Walker, Metal Gear Solid 5. It's all about that.
Yeah, and that's kind of where like The Rock kind of fits in with that, because that's what's about, kind of, and that's where I think that movie kind of has a little more gravity to it and is overall better, because I think it just. Maybe I don't know if they meant to have any deep messaging.
Oh, I'm sure. I mean, they were making a statement. I mean,
Whereas like Con Air is just like the opposite of that, because it's this military, this highly decorated military guy gets thrown
like,
in.
What do you want to say with this film? I want to say that Nick Cage needs to give this bear to his daughter, and his friend needs insulin. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's the two driving.
That bunny. Put the bunny down. Yeah.
And that's like the two driving forces in this. And
but they were smart enough to have a driving force. You know what I mean? You need something. You need as simple as that. It's a simple thing. They let you know, and then that way the action can kick off, and you just know, hey, we want him to give this to his daughter at the end, and we want his friend to get insulin. You know what I mean? Like that's all you need to know. And we don't want anybody to get raped or innocent people to get killed.
Actually, though, a good scene in this, or it kind of, I don't know why this reminds me of Judge Dredd, and I guess it's because there's like the plane wreck in both of them. Is like Danny Trejo's character, like they're, oh yeah, he's definitely dead, and they pick him up and his arm's still hanging.
Oh yeah,
like I thought that was kind of cool.
Oh yeah.
Like,
one last thing,
pretty well.
One last thing before I'm done with stuff on this. The movie did have a couple elements, so they didn't really question why Danny Trejo was knocked out and handcuffed up. And then when they were trying to figure out who on the plane, because Ving Rhames was looking through the hull, and they found information that indicated that one of the convicts on the plane was free, and they were questioning why they were still on. So they were questioning who it was, and then his friend character was like, "It was me, the insulin guy," and then he got killed, or he got shot.
He got shot.
Yeah, because he lived, right?
Yeah.
So he gets shot or whatever. But then later, when John Malkovich and Nicolas Cage are fighting, he knows his daughter's name, as if he read the letter, therefore would have known who it was.
They did read the letter.
Yeah, he did read the letter.
Yeah, Ving Rhames.
Yeah, he was
reading. He's like, today is July 14th. It's because he was walking through reading it in an accent. He's like, it's my daughter's birthday today. It's July 14th. Yeah.
They even step on it at the end when like there's a fight, like they step on the letter and all that. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So maybe I was being close enough attention.
Well, also, William, Major Garland has that body fall in his car too. He's setting it from Twin Peaks.
we didn't even talk about that.
Yeah. There's also a very 90s thing, which is they're going through John Malkovich's belongings in prison, and he has a copy of the Anarchist Cookbook on his bed, which was like, oh no, very big taboo. We were talking about that, I think it's Slack, William, with like, people illegally downloading that in high school, and people telling me like, if you download that, they're going to track you and like come and get you. So I was like cautious and afraid to download the Anarchist Cookbook.
Well, just real quick about the
Dave very taboo.
Just about the Dave Chappelle death. He gets stuck in the landing gear and he gets killed. So they find him, and then Nicolas Cage writes a message on his T-shirt to Sharpie and just kicks him down until he falls out. And then you have like the entire setup of like, I just got my car washed and there's bird shit on it now. And then they're doing that, and then the dead body just falls right in their car. That was great.
Yeah.
The flaw in that plan is if he falls and gets too mangled, you can't read it, obviously.
Yeah. But he fell in the car and it worked out perfectly. So
I think other movies have done that too. If somebody falls out onto a car.
Yeah.
Do we have any other thoughts on this movie before we wrap things up?
Are we going to do a rating on it? I know we're not. I know.
What's your rating?
I mean, I don't want to give it like, I really enjoyed it. And I think, not being ridiculous, I think a 7 out of 10 is a very fair rating on it.
I'm right there with you.
Because it's not like the best action movie. It's not like a Rock type to me, but it's very fun. It's very fast paced. It's almost 2 hours. And it never, to me, doesn't drag. Once it gets going, it goes.
If you're rating this on the 90s dad movie scale, so
it's a 10,
it's for a 90s dad movie, it's a 10 out of 10. Because I've heard people talking about like, dad movies. This is like an ultimate dad movie for the 90s.
Yeah.
You want your comedy and action, you just do a double feature with Wild Hogs and your evening is set. That's what we need to do at the drive-ins. Just
you know what? I
petition for a Wild Hogs Con Air, make thousands of dollars.
But actually, we should just cover Wild Hogs for this podcast. I didn't think about that.
Okay, well, my birthday's in November, so maybe my 35th. Your 35th is in October, right, William?
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll do Wild Hogs for his, and then I'll pick something.
No, we'll do a double bill of John Travolta classics, Battlefield Earth and Gotti.
Well, we need to watch the Fred Durst one because that's free on Prime. Yeah, we really do, Derek. One day we need to watch. We need to do like Raising Arizona and Adaptation.
Yeah,
we need to watch.
Yeah, so
those are great movies.
But we just need to reinforce that Con Air is Oscar nominated. So I give.
This is the Oscar nominated only podcast. We only talk about Oscar nominated. we should do a podcast series where we only cover the films that are Oscar nominated that you would not expect. You know what I mean? Like, we're not doing ones that are nominated for best, or if they are best film, it's surprising.
Yeah. But it's just funny because I was reading about that movie and it's like, oh, it was Oscar nominated and it lost out to Titanic song.
But
so maybe if it wasn't going to get Titanic, this movie could have won an Oscar.
That's going to wrap up our Con Air discussion. You can find all the stuff at housevisor.com or hbtvs.com. You can find all the stuff on YouTube and Instagram and Facebook, although we haven't posted much lately. We're trying to get back into it. I have some ideas to try to do a short film in the next couple months to get something out, but we'll have more stuff on the 13 slates till Christmas when more of that information is available and publicly shareable. And then Derek, you have a new Instagram page, right?
Yeah, maybe I've talked about this stuff on the podcast before, but
I think we did last time because you had to dip out.
Okay, yeah, my phone died on me. But I'm real into collectibles, modern stuff like SH Figure Arts or Storm Collectibles. Also, I'm a huge Dragon Ball fan, so I got a large collection of that. But I also like collecting like vintage stuff as well. So, I just kind of out of boredom, I'd made. Like most people, I found something to do with it. I made an Instagram page. It's done a lot better than I thought it would because I kind of figured I'd post a couple of things and it wouldn't go anywhere. I would just delete it.
I mean, don't collect that much stuff, but I follow some of those pages. I just like looking, even if I don't buy a lot of that stuff, I just like checking it out because it is, yeah.
Well, I've always kind of collected stuff a little bit, but I've done it more recently. So it's Meta World Toys. It's Meta World _toys with an S. And one thing to keep in mind, like a lot of things, I kind of follow the thing. It was like, okay, I'll do a giveaway. So 700 followers, if you're interested in that and Dragon Ball stuff, I'm doing a giveaway. And I actually have it right here. If you could, watching the thing, it's an unopened Super Saiyan Goku figure. But the way I kind of did it too is I put it to a vote and it tied. So it tied. So I'm going to do first, second, and I went to a couple different local places and picked up some like kind of little knick-knack random stuff to do 3 of them. So now I'm getting pretty close to that.
We've never done one for ours. We've always talked about the only thing we've done giveaways for is for like tickets to like Days of the Dead because they've asked us, hey, do you want to do a ticket giveaway or something? If we've asked for media passes, but yeah, let us know how that goes. Because
because I had quite a bit of responses on the voting. Now, when it comes to how I'm going to do the giveaway, I'm going to kind of have to figure that out because I want to do it in a way that is more enjoyable for the people I'm giving it away for. Because I think a lot of times, it's like, well, share this, do that, and that, and it's like, well, that's, I know the thing is like you want to expand your brand or whatever it is, but it's like at the end of the day, like I don't necessarily love kind of doing that stuff either, as far as like having to share stuff or tag 7 people. It's like, well, that's not fun, and it kind of would keep me from doing it.
Well, you have to have something that is also trackable for you to like do like a random number generator to choose the winners or something.
But I got a lot of stuff going on there. So if you ever want to check stuff out, and then the other thing is like, I might do and start doing like unboxing videos because because of COVID, they didn't do Comic-Con this year. They didn't do it in person. They had it streamed. And one of the figure arts I got is a limited edition one, and it was a kind of first come first serve, just get lucky deal. And the first night they had done it, went so bad because I think I talked about it in the message. Yeah. They gave it up to 6 per person, and almost every single one of them was purchased by bots and resellers. So they immediately hit. So they goofed it so bad they went ahead and did another night the next night. And I was able to get it the next night because like the server crashed and you'd have stuff in your cart and you'd be ringing out, and when you went to go pay now, it would drop out. Now, I know, William, you've done more of the shoe stuff. That's kind of the limited releases. So you have a little more. Have you done many of the stuff like that, Sean, where you try to get the limited?
Yeah, like I've done like some Mondo stuff. I did actually recently do. I thought it was a plastic one, but it was I can't remember who did it, but it's Jaws. It was a Comic-Con exclusive. I didn't know they were doing like regular ones, but it was. But I thought it was a figure because my daughter loves well, she likes Jaws quite a bit, but it's like a plushie. But I got one of those because it wasn't hard. But yeah, I feel like I would be happier if they did like raffles. Like, hey, go to the site, within this window of, you got a 10-minute window or something, because those things do sell out so fast. But you got anybody that puts in their email within these 10-minute window or something, then we'll do a random thing, and at least it's not going to be all bots. At least that. Yeah.
Like Adidas on their app, if they do certain draws, you actually have to have the location services turned on to prove you're a person.
That's good.
So you can still create 10 accounts, but there's at least
so no Blade Runners can get any of those.
Well, like this was through the premium Bandai website, which is kind of like you have to make an account and verify and all that, but you can still make a bot.
Yeah.
Which is one of those things where I don't think they realized how big of an event it was going to be, because like the Dragon Ball stuff, they sold out like immediately. It was a big deal. And they had like some Godzilla stuff that they was doing as well. And there's another company, Storm Collectibles, that did more combat stuff. So like all this stuff hit online so it's kind of cool that people actually got an option to get this stuff without having to be at Comic-Con.
Yeah.
And you could get it for the retail price instead of having to buy it aftermarket and paying the uptick on it. But
I wanted to get those movie Ninja Turtle ones, but I've seen everybody say, hey, I've been to like 7 Walmarts or Targets or whatever, and I just don't want to go to a lot of places right now. I wouldn't have the time to go to that many anyway, but like those are ones that I would like to get.
I think the problem too, a lot of stuff like that is like, I mean, I have, it's just me and my wife, no kids. So I have some expendable income, a lot more than other people, but they'll go to places like that and buy like 5 of them.
Yeah.
And it's like, I can't do that because, I don't know how much those run, but like the stuff I've been buying that this the higher end stuff's like $60.
Yeah, you can't go spend just $600 on a win.
They had some of those smaller Ninja Turtle ones that were like $100 for all 4 or something. Yeah. I was going to do those because there are the bigger ones that are like, I don't know if they were like $100 per one or something crazy. And I don't know, they've released another line of them. It seems like they're going to continue to do some. So I'm just hoping that they're going to keep releasing some in that form factor and that look that great that people are going to, eventually they're going to free up maybe in like 5 years for me.
And the way that stuff works is because I know I've seen people who are artists talk about, they'll do like a print. And if they just say it's for sale on my website and there's no limit, they'll sell 100. If they make 300 and say it's a limited edition one-time deal, they'll sell all of them immediately.
Yeah.
So a lot of times putting a implied scarcity on it makes it sell quicker, because like Adidas and Nike sell more shoes by making them limited edition drops than they do by making it a continually on sale, never-ending supply deal, which seems counterintuitive, but that's what, that's how a lot of that operates.
I mean, the demand's there. If something's limited, people want it more than they normally would. So it just automatically jumps up,
Just a couple places we're Louisville based. So if you're from Louisville and you're interested in collectibles, a couple of cool places to check out that are pretty reasonable price wise is the Antique Toy Mall, which is off of Blue Lick Road. I'm trying to think of the other one. You have Great Escape, which is in the Highlands, which I think most people probably know about Great Escape. And there's another place called Toy Crazy Collectibles, which is over off of Preston.
Mm-hmm.
And that's pretty cool too. But that one is more vintage stuff. So you have like a lot of vintage Marvel, Star Wars, and they still get like current Marvel Legends. And they actually had some Street Fighter stuff that I picked up, which is kind of weird. That I always like seeing Street Fighter stuff because you don't see much of it. They had quite a bit of it there. But you can find cool stuff in all those places. I found some cool stuff in Peddler's Malls too.
Yeah, the Peddler. Sometimes there's some booths there too that have a ton of figures every now and then.
The stuff that I like finding is people who have stuff but don't know what they have, because they kind of have an idea. They want like top dollar for it, and it's But I got like a vintage. It's like a from 1991 Master Shredder, and it's fuzzy, and I've never seen one of those. So
is it with like a soft cape?
It's supposed to have
cape. Yeah,
it's supposed to have.
I had that one, I think. Yeah,
but this one's just naked.
Yeah, the cape. Mine always got ripped off, so he was like forever just like the shirtless Shredder. Yeah, he's got like no clothes like from here, and he's the arm. Yeah, that's the one. And I don't know where my cape is at either.
Yeah, and there's apparently like entire eBay accounts and Etsy accounts of people that remake that stuff. Which is funny that you can go on there and find, clothing for a toy made in 1980.
Yeah.
That somebody's went and got the stuff for. And apparently, too, you can find a lot of stuff that people have like got 3D printers now. And they've remade a lot of the old He-Man, and which that stuff's pretty cool too.
I like seeing the accounts that like make custom figures that hand paint them or change them up. You know, there's another guy who I just found that like does illustrations for like concepts for Ninja Turtles. You know, because there was always all those different ones that he like, and he'll design like what the box art would be for it. Like, oh, this is like a, you know, Adventure Leo, where he's like, or Camping Leo, where he's camping out, and he's like designed the whole box art and stuff. Like, I love to see that, or like the horror themed ones. I think that's cool. You know,
there's an article that you sent us. It was about or you were William one. It was about just the weirdest Ninja Turtles that they had made.
Yeah,
and I enjoy that because they don't do that with toys anymore. Because now it's like more. Because I collect like the Marvel Legends. Because like, you know, when we were kids, like I'm sure if you inflated it, they might be the same. But like if you spent $8 for a toy in '94, that's probably equivalent to $20 now or around, I would think. But like nowadays for kids, it's like you see what they have, because I know I can get in a big toy thing, but McFarlane kind of changed everything with their toys. And now you look at what we had when we were growing up compared to what you can go buy now. There's like no comparison.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, you had the toys that had like 3 levels of articulation, like the arms moved up and the legs kind of moved, and now you have like the fully articulated, photorealistic, 1/8 scale stuff. But yeah, so you can check out your Instagram at METTAWORLD_toys.
Yeah, Meta World Toys.
And then so for what is that, 13 Slaves Till Christmas, their stuff is under Blood Moon Pictures normally, right?
Yes, on
Facebook, and I feel like they have an Instagram account, but I'm not seeing it come up immediately. But yeah, anyway, Blood Moon Pictures is where you would go on Facebook at least to keep updates on their stuff, which I think they're starting to post some updates now or something. Yeah. I occasionally get on there, but yeah.
Yep. So that'll wrap up this episode of the House by Baseball podcast. Thanks for listening.
House by the